this to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it, up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
Man, that's a good intro.
All right, if you're listening to this, you were listening to the very first 28-3 podcast. It's on 328. I'm Corey. You're here with Max and Nick. Let's get into it. Derek Carr, biggest free agency signing we got so far. What do you think, Max?
You know, Nick and I have been talking about Carr for years. He's been a big advocate for him. I love the signing. I think we finally have a quarterback after last year watching Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. Just can't watch that anymore. I need an actual NFL starting quarterback who can win us a game when it needs to be won.
Yeah, and like Max said, we've talked about this for years. When Drew Brees retired, the first person I told Max I thought we should sign is Derek Carr. The reason being is his style of play, I felt, matched up with the Peyton-style offense. He's extremely accurate. He's great in the short game. He can throw the deep ball for the shock play. It's a young Drew Brees type of quarterback. Obviously, trying to compare him to somebody like that is impossible, but the guy has the same type of skill set as Drew did when he came over here, and I felt he fit great into our offense.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth there. I mean, that's a big comparison.
Huge.
A type of Drew Brees kind of quarterback. I mean, I know he was going through some shit in Las Vegas last year, but I mean, are we not a little bit worried about last year with Derek Carr?
I'm not. It was a new system. Josh McDaniels, I don't think he really gelled with the system as well. And, he needs to be somewhere like New Orleans. We've got some good weapons. We've got Rashid Shaheed. We got Chris Olave. We got Michael Thomas back. This team is set up. I mean, he's got better weapons than Brees had for the last couple of years. Sean Payton always took the opposite approach. We always used to say we need to flood Brees with as many weapons as possible the older he gets. Peyton did the opposite of that. The wide receivers that we saw not this past season, but the season before when we were trotting out Marquez Callaway as our number one receiver, I mean, that's unacceptable.
I was going to say, it's not so much of a Derek Carr take, but last year was probably one of the first drafts in a long time where I saw us draft for need, but a need that made sense. Whereas we didn't draft a million draft picks to go up and get Marcus Davenport or Peyton Turner. The best-looking dude on the board who was in a position of need was Chris Olave. We drafted Chris Olave.
But
we did give up a lot to go get him.
Yeah, we also traded up a ton
Nick's
of
got some
capital
opinions on that. So
yeah, but we didn't trade all those picks for an unproven guy out of UTSA or an unproven guy out of University of Houston.
We like Olave more than Davenport.
I mean, I think the whole country liked Olave more than Davenport.
To give up that much capital,
marquee team.
You gave up, what did it equate to? How many picks did we give up for Olave? 5 picks total to move up and get him. I think Loomis probably thought he was a little bit closer to, competing at a much higher level than we were last year due to the quarterback situation. And I think we overpaid to go get Olave. But now that we have Olave, you have to be excited about that and just move on and accept that we've got a guy who can make a difference, who we hope even takes a leap this year over last year. We had some injury and a couple, rough ball security plays last year that hurt us. But overall, he was amazing, especially early in the season. And you hope that translates and gets a little bit better with a guy who continues to improve because he's obviously got a skill set that's going to work in our offense.
Yeah, I think the Olave piece becomes a lot more valuable when you're talking about Olave as your 2 or your slot guy, and then you have your true 1 with Michael Thomas.
Hopefully Olave, Michael Thomas can bounce back.
Right. The Olave piece becomes a whole different variable if you're saying he's your best guy.
So that's a good question on where the Saints are now. Thomas has been out 3 straight years, essentially, or a non-factor for 3 straight years. Looked incredible for his 5 games last year. 4 touchdowns. I think he played 5. Was it 4 or 5? But 4 touchdowns early in the season. Looked like the guy that was going to change the offense, make those tough catches. And if he was to go down, how do we look right now, receiver-wise? Who's our go-to
big
short
body
route,
guy,
big body,
contested
fights
catches.
for the contested catches, wins those? Olave's a route running genius, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to get open. He's going to do those deep crossers, get deep. He can do everything, get separation all over the field. But who makes that 3rd and 3 catch on that slant that Thomas could do better than anyone in the league a few years ago?
Yeah, I think the hope with that is they signed Brian Edwards today, formerly of the Las Vegas Raiders and the Atlanta Falcons last year. A quick little stint, and he's a big body guy, and he looked.
But
really
is he
good.
that type of player, or is he more of a intermediate?
Well, no, he's a
deep type
contested
player?
catch guy.
Well, it begs the question: are we in need of signing yet another big body?
I wouldn't mind us drafting another receiver, a big body guy, a younger guy. Hopefully you
Or
can
tight end.
develop him. So I think we do need another receiver.
The tight end that I want.
Who's that?
Yeah, Big O.
Oh man, I'm with you. Actually, we're going to be in agreement on this one.
That's across the board. That's who we need to draft.
This is a Darnell Washington Agent Zero.
I mean, when I saw some of those mocks
Fantastic.
having us take the Myers kid out of Notre Dame, I'm thinking
Good
news
Mayer's,
is,
Mayer's
like-
a beast, man. I'd take
He's
him
a
in a
beast,
second.
but he
he
won't
looks
make
like
it there, so we should be good there.
he looks like he's moving in slow motion compared to Darnell.
I don't know. Look, Darnell's a monster, and I would love to have him on the team. next
Darnell
year.
can be a plus blocker too.
All right,
Yeah.
so here's the thing: we've shifted this from Derek Carr to weapons surrounding Carr, and I think that's relevant because you can't talk about Carr unless you're talking about what he's got to work with.
Okay, I got
So-
something to say on that. We've seen a lot of national media guys come in and say that the Saints refuse to reset the scales and rebuild. I have a problem with that because the core of the Saints, if you look at the core players, most of them are in their prime. When you're talking, Lattimore, Werner, Ramczyk, the offensive line, McCoy, Ruiz, Alante Taylor, Adebo. You've got all these mid-20s guys. You have a roster that's set up to win now. Our problem was we didn't have a quarterback that could win now. And that's why the Carr signing makes all the sense in the world. You have to go for it right now. And Carr, in my opinion, was the best option available to the Saints, and we went out and got him. So you have to feel positive about that. This tanking to try and get a rookie that you know nothing about, it makes no sense with a roster this good. We have 10 people on the roster that have made a Pro Bowl in the last 3 years. It makes no sense to blow it up. You need to try and get them in position and let these guys go win games. The defense the last half of the year nobody's talking about was a top 5 defense in the league, hands down. Yeah. Once the injuries, kind of subsided, we got most of our people back, the defense started to dominate again. That defense is still intact. The only question marks are when will Cam and DeMario start showing their age? They haven't yet. Maybe Cam a little bit, but he had a great year last year. DeMario had an all-pro year once again, second-team all-pro. How, we don't just bail on that. And the rest of the roster of our best players is under 30 years old, almost across the board.
You mentioned something funny that made me think about when Breeze was in his prime, you go back to 11, it was almost like there was no semblance of rebuilding because we were so good. But everybody was always waiting for the defense to catch up to the offense. It seems like the tables have completely reversed to where, looking at the way the offense functioned last year and the way the defense functioned in comparison, it's like you just said, Nick, it's like we've got this defense. When are we going to have an offense that complements the defense? And so the question going back to the Carr signing is not so much that is Derek Carr, we all know Derek Carr is better than Andy Dalton. Sorry,
Derek
Andy,
Carr today
but
is the second best quarterback in Saints history.
And I heard that was mentioned on Friend of the Pod, Saints Twitter podcast, that Max had said. Max posed the question to them. Derek Carr immediately becomes the second best Saints quarterback in Saints history. So
100%.
knowing that, it's not so much the quality, but is the margin, the difference between what we had with Dalton and or Jameis last year. Jameis healthy, big asterisk there. Is it big enough of a difference?
Well, here's the thing. With Jameis and with Dalton, you're not going to be able to count on them in a 2-minute drill to win a game when you're down by 4.
I'm also going to say this. From a coaching standpoint, you're not going to call a game the same way with Andy Dalton as your quarterback.
Correct.
At 34 years old. I think that's how old he is. Versus Derek Carr. That game is going to be called completely different. You will have a much more aggressive game plan with someone with the skill set of Carr versus Dalton. That's just reality. A coach can't afford to let the big mistake lose a game. We're leaning on our defense more. Now maybe you can be more aggressive with Derek and go for things early, try and get the lead early, not be as defensive-minded in the way you call the offensive game plan.
Yeah, and here's one thing, man. I've been listening to people on Saints Twitter, other social media sites and all of that, acting like we're too good for Derek Carr. Like, if you have watched Derek Carr throw a football, Like the guy can sling it as well as anyone in the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in this league. The dude has a cannon.
Yeah, it's like
That
how many
pass
games
he
last
threw-
year would you have said, like, when we were trailing or just getting killed, hey, if Derek Carr came in and filled in for Andy Dalton right now, would you take it?
Well, look at the number of 4-quarter comebacks Carr has in his career.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he's the leader since 2014.
Yeah.
Which is pretty damn impressive.
And in terms of active players, now that Brady's retired, he's got to be up there.
Yeah, and you watch Andy Dalton, and look, he did better than any of us thought he would last year.
He way outperformed what he was here for. No
Way
question about it. No negative things to say about him. But he's a 4 straight year NFL backup now.
Yeah.
That's his role in the NFL now. We put him into a starting role, and he overperformed. He did a great job for us. Look, I keep saying it. I know we've bagged on Dennis Allen, and a lot of the Saints fans were really down on that. We were in every game this year. We had a chance to win every game except Baltimore, in my opinion. Baltimore came
That's
in
the
and just
one game where
destroyed
they
us.
kicked the shit out of us.
game?
Other than that,
Man.
those other 16 games in the fourth quarter, the Saints had a chance to win them all, and they blew games in mind-boggling fashion that were player mistakes. A microcosm of the season is the Mark Ingram play. Mark Ingram is a dog. He has been a badass Saints player his whole career. When he was in Baltimore, tough as nails. Never does Mark Ingram run out of bounds.
Yeah, he's got the
In that
dog on the
situation.
X-ray that they always show.
Yeah.
there's no way
100%.
that thing doesn't come out.
That's what made him be able to play the 13 years that he was able to play, is because he never took a playoff. And he was injured. We all know it, and that's a real tough situation. I guarantee you he wishes that never would have happened. And that's just kind of I think a lot of it comes down to luck and, misfortune for the Saints this past year. Injuries obviously were out of control. But we
2 years
competed
in a row.
in every single game except one. They were all there with a couple plays one direction to be won.
Yep.
And that was with a backup quarterback. Now you have a bona fide top 15 NFL quarterback here. If you don't think that makes a 2 to 3 win difference, I just disagree completely.
I don't like Dennis Allen as a head coach, but I will say he has no excuses going into this season.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I get why they gave him a second year. I don't necessarily like it. But
But
nobody
you
else
have to
better
give him a
out.
second year. You have to.
Who else are
Look,
you going
and,
with?
and
if it's
that's a
not
fair
him?
point. But
And you
that being
cannot
said,
judge any coach ever on an injury-plagued year like we just had. It wouldn't be fair to anyone. And I'm not saying Dennis Allen's a great coach. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the jury's still out, and this year is Dennis Allen's chance to prove if he's a good coach or if he's not.
Well, here's the deal. It's gonna be on him this year because he got rid of a couple of good defensive coaches, and he has his quarterback now.
Did he get
and
rid of
he's
him, or-
bringing people
Well, they
in.
left.
Or were they hired?
left.
They were. He didn't want him there.
You don't think you wanted Nielsen there?
There were some quote unquote differences in philosophy. You can read between the lines on that.
Either way.
Either way,
Perhaps.
they're not here. This is his team now, through and through, coaches and players.
I think the one thing you can take about him in a positive, outlook from last year, he's a defensive coach, and when we had the majority of our defensive starters on the field, we were a top 5 defense. That's why they hired him. Now, hopefully the offense can catch up. Now they have a quarterback that allows them to catch up, and we have to see what happens.
All right, look, I will say this as a positive for DA. Players took pay cuts to stay with the team this year.
Yeah,
That doesn't happen very often.
Look, he was like a college recruiter out there this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the thing. Look, we all thought Michael Thomas was gone. The second that
Yeah.
contract was renegotiated,
Yeah.
we thought that was the end of the Michael Thomas era.
Yeah, some people were giving shit to the respective journalists that said this restructure represents the fact that he's 90% out the door. I don't blame
Well, I think-
any Saints journalist for saying that because
It
in
looked like
any
it.
other year of the Saints,
I
any other
would've
year of any
bet
other
my
team,
But
he's
life-
gone.
I would also say that
he
it
came
feels
back.
like that
Yeah.
deal was structured in a way to let Mike go look around if we didn't get him a quarterback.
Right. Correct.
Okay, so
Sure.
It was
maybe
almost an option. a
this is
player
all
option.
speculation, of course. None of us know any of this, but it seems like, hey, we're going to go find a solution. We're going to put this contract where either you're going to make a ton of money,
Well, he was never going to cede the money on that.
or you'll
contract.
be cut and get to pick where you want
Right.
to go. We're gonna let you pick where you go. We're not going to trade you for a pick. You did
Right.
great for us. We're going to let you go pick your spot, or if we solve it, we want you to stay. And
thing-
we're going to give you a little bit of the power to decide that. because you will have to restructure if we go get this quarterback. And he did, and he wanted to stay. I think that says a lot.
No, it absolutely does. And look, Andrus Pete flat out took a pay cut.
Well,
Jameis took a pay cut. Now, maybe the opportunities, his agent put, feelers out there and realized there wasn't going to be a starting quarterback opportunity for him next season.
Well, also the dead money thing with Jameis was
right, but he didn't have to do that, is my point.
No,
Like, he could have taken the free agency
100%.
route, and we would have been, we would have taken a bigger hit.
yeah, I'm kind of glad Pete took a pay cut, to be honest. I think it's a deserved pay cut.
It's a well-deserved pay cut.
I will tell you this, though.
I think Jameis is kind of an outlier in terms of the decision model of most NFL quarterbacks.
Pete takes a
he
lot
does
of
things
hits,
differently.
too, but if we're
He's
going to
a
run
good
the
one.
ball, Pete needs to be in the lineup.
Yeah.
Because Pete is a difference maker in our run game.
Look, when
for
there's
sure.
a screen pass and Pete is out there in the open, he
Pete's
is
the
gonna
most athletic
maul.
dude on the line, dude.
Yeah.
But there's
and,
no one who looks worse getting owned on
Well,
a
except-
pass down than him.
Well, he
I mean, when
becomes a
there's
meme
middle
every time he
pressure,
fucks up.
when there's middle
Not his
pressure,
forte.
good lord. But no, I think going back to the Carr thing, the day that it was announced that he signed with the Saints, I think the thing that actually made me happier than seeing that he was actually our quarterback was Mike Thomas's tweet in reply of "Thank you, Jesus" with the praise hands, because for a guy who's usually so cryptic on Twitter, I think that one message by
It says it
MT was so just straight to the point. It was obvious what it related to, and it showed you that, hey, your real one is on board with this signing, and contract structure as it may be, you knew at that point that guy wants to be back.
Yeah, and look, everything they've done this offseason, and we'll talk about it as we get into it, the other free agency signings. Man, it's been an incredible offseason. It's been a lot of positivity relative to this time last year when I don't think the Saints had signed a single person at this point. It was a very slow start to the free agency period last year. We're all sitting around debating on Twitter and debating in person like, what the fuck are
Marcus
they
May.
doing? But then
amount
they
of-
finally got rolling.
Yeah.
And, they went for the whole chase with Watson, and that didn't work out, probably for
But
the
then
best.
they went May and Matthew.
Yeah, but that was post-draft, which
There's two things that have been a pretty good constant of Saints free agency over the past 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. One of them is the cap alarmists, that the Saints are $100 million under the cap or $1 billion under the cap. Oh my
mean
God,
$1 billion
they're gonna
over the
have
cap?
Over.
yeah, you know what I mean. They're gonna have to release everybody. They're gonna have to tank. They're gonna have to. That's one constant. The other constant is the little meme of like the stick figure poking something, saying like "do something," like sign somebody. That's usually been a constant of every Saints. This year, you had one of the equation. You definitely had the Saints are.
Well, the one position
80
they had to
million
go
over the
get,
cap,
they went
but
and
you
got.
didn't have the stick figure this year. There was no
Yeah.
stick figure. It was. I mean,
Well, that's because they signed Carr. Because
well,
you
but
address
they've also
Is
been
it?
doing things the whole offseason.
Yeah.
But they were patient too.
Yeah.
Like the Carr was the thing that had to happen for Saints
Yeah.
fans to like. We knew the biggest issue was finding someone who could win games at quarterback. Period. They did that. Everyone was happy. Anything after that was lanyard. Then we got a little panic when we lost Onyemata and Caden, and people were like, "What are we doing on defense? Or we have no defensive line. There's not a tackle on the roster." And then they addressed that in day 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And got rotational players that can go in there and play. And I think you've got to like what they did.
Yeah, and look, if we're being honest, Colin Saunders and the other one, those guys are as good as Tuttle and Onyemata were last year.
shout out to his Twitter. It's
Yeah,
Colin,
they weren't
not
as
Caleb.
good as prime
Yeah, Colin
Onyemata.
Saunders, yeah.
Not as good as prime Onyemata, but last year for sure.
We haven't seen prime Onyemata in about 3
no,
seasons.
2 years.
But what does prime Onyemata fit really in the lexicon of NFL starting defensive tackle?
There was a reason
He
we
was
were
a
the
good
best
starter.
run
Was it
defensive.
good, right?
Well, he was a really good starter.
We were the best run. I mean, one of the
Best
best
run
run
defense
defense over
for-
a 5-year
yeah.
span. That was Onyemata and
Was
Cam.
it?
Yeah.
Onyemata was a monster,
He's a
man.
beast.
Now, the problem is he
So he
has
was
not
good.
been a monster in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
Suspension.
did you say on your monster?
He was an Onyemata.
He was Onyemata monster.
What would he be now?
Did you not like him? Do you think he was overrated?
No, I always liked Onyemata. I mean, I always thought he was over.
He never
I've
made
always-
he never made an abundance of money either.
I liked him
with
because
us.
I always thought he was overachieving. Now, did I ever think he was like plug and play?
He was
even
a,
in his prime.
He was a
someone
top
with the-
20 defensive tackle in the league.
He's a top
That is
10 run
best.
tackle in the league
Yeah.
for sure.
right. No, look, I thought he was indispensable for us for a while. I think this year he became dispensable.
How long did we go without a 100-yard rusher with Onyemata?
It was a while.
A long time.
It was a
There's
while.
3 other dudes on the defensive line, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
but that was his skill set.
Yeah. So we talked about Carr. Outside of Carr, you know, and I think we talked about this, like the position we're in, I don't think we're in pre-draft right now. I think we're in that window that's post-free agency to the draft.
Well,
kind
you're
of
still in
building
free
up-
agency. There's still
building up
players out
pre-draft.
there.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
in wave 2 and 3 at this
I
time.
mean, but the thing is, like, it's pretty clear Mickey has, you know, had his full meal at Ralph's in the park or at Brennan's or wherever he wants to take the next free agent. You know, he's back home taking his post-meal nap. Like, he's not going to be making moves, at least anything drastic like Jamal Williams,
Unless
Derek Carr for a while.
inexpensive deals pop.
So the point is, where do we sit now? And besides Carr, what's y'all's favorite signing or most impactful signing?
Already signing or where we're looking?
Besides Carr, given where we are,
I'll tell you this. What I would like to see them do between now and the draft is get me an edge rusher.
Pass rusher, no question.
Yeah, get a
And there's
pass rusher. There's a few good ones floating around.
If
And,
you
you
can
know,
get
get
them
us
on a
one of those
veteran
guys.
deal, like $3 million, you know, when the market dries up, any kind of veteran pass rusher is a great move to push Peyton Turner. No question about it.
Yeah, because I still don't trust Peyton Turner.
I
mean, nobody can at this point.
I've seen Frank Clark thrown out there. I've seen Leonard Floyd thrown out there. DeForest Buckner. Now he shot.
would be a
He
trade.
shot. He shot back on Twitter saying
He's
know,
staying.
I think he replied to an NFL rumors account saying, you know, check your sources.
I can
But,
just say if you can get
know,
him and fit him under your cap, any team takes that guy.
yeah.
He's a difference maker.
That's what we're looking for. I think we're in agreement on that. You know, we definitely need an edge rusher because right now you got Cam, and Cam's one of my favorite players ever.
All right, so let's rephrase that. What price would you pay for a 1 year?
I'll be honest with you, we have what, like $15 million in cap space right now. I don't give a shit how much you pay him.
Yeah.
Get somebody.
Also, price is so hard to define with Loomis right now because
Well,
you know,
the cap-
like, is it priced this year? Is it his dead money in 3
Look,
years?
as opposed to what Nick Wright would try to tell you, we're not in cap hell.
But real quick, the memes on him were just winners, all winners. I don't care what meme you did on Nick Wright; they all won.
It's kind of ridiculous that these guys get paid to cover the National Football League and they still do not understand how the cap works.
Yeah, it's my problem with the cap alarmists, or there's cap truthers. There are
Well, they're uninformed.
cap
That's my problem.
guilt artists. The one of the common threads I see, maybe it's only me, is that they try to use the cap and cap discipline against you as a person. You know, when you're making an argument that Loomis doesn't have to worry about the cap, Loomis figures out the cap every year. They start saying, well, what would you do if it was your bank account and the bank was coming after you? Are you just going to go spending more money that you don't have? I was like, that's not an apple for apple equation. That's apples to oranges. You know, people get righteous about cap as if it's,
Well,
you know,
here's the thing.
fiscal
It's not our
responsibility.
money.
It's not.
So when we sit around a bar and somebody's like, oh, that's too much money, who gives a shit?
It's
Like if
NFL
we
cap.
get a good player and Gail
you
Benson's
don't want to
fine
spend
signing
too
those
much
checks,
money for the value you get. That's the only amount of
And
money
I think
that
it
matters.
was. I think it was Underhill that tweeted this, and someone got on him because he brought up COVID, and someone said, "Oh, sure, COVID was the reason for the Saints' cap issues."
Well, it
I
really
don't
is.
think he was all wrong for that. You know,
He's
because
not wrong.
'cause-
We've had this discussion many
Yeah.
a time, and the reality is the way the Saints structure their cap payouts. And shout out to Kai Harley for this because Loomis gets too much credit. Kai
true.
Harley's the
You
man.
gotta respect the Kai.
He is the man.
Yeah,
Now the way the Saints do it is they know the cap is going to rise every year.
Exactly.
So they build it in when they're cutting these essentially second bonus checks.
part of the model.
And then adding on the void years to the end of the deal. It's basically a foregone conclusion. Whenever you sign a big contract, you're going to get a bonus the second season.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a void year or two tacked on.
one of the biggest criticisms we always get is dead money. I would like to actually see. I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but a comparison of the amount an NFL salary cap increases from, say, 2022 to 2023. The increase in the cap compared to whatever dead money we're carrying. I'd be really curious to see where our dead money compares to the cap increase every year, because you know that Kai or Mickey has to.
Yeah, but I
factor
mean,
that in.
again, it doesn't matter if you're winning. The Saints were
No,
one of the
I'm
top
not saying
teams
it's
in
a
the
bad thing.
league.
I mean, like,
Dead money doesn't matter if you're trying to chase
but they could be factoring
Yeah.
winning right now.
the dead money.
It
almost
matters
built
if
in
you're
you
trying
know
to
the cap's
build.
going up. That's what I'm saying.
Well, okay, so
Which is fine,
COVID,
which is fine.
Underhill is spot on. Like, COVID
Yeah.
literally was the only thing that could wreck the
And-
Saints' plans.
And the cap decreased, right, because of COVID.
Well, it stayed flat.
Flat.
right, which is
Well, it was flat for 2 years. I think it decreased the first year and then it stayed flat the
barely.
second year.
but either
Yeah,
way,
it was
throws a
essentially flat.
complete wrench into Loomis's model.
Right.
Right.
So
yeah, I don't think he's off. For
But
that.
the reality is, like, I mean, he's not off. He's spot on. Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly the only thing that could have possibly slowed down the Saints' plans.
But that's also
was
the
that.
risk in counting on the raises. It's part of the equation. I guarantee Loomis keeps that in mind. That okay, let's say revenue's down this year for the NFL. Blah 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 blah. He puts a risk factor on making those bets, and he's making those bets. COVID, obviously, you could never predict,
Right.
And to that level, there's no way he could have seen.
But
that
to
coming.
your point, he's also counting on it jumping up bigger amounts in years where there's a new TV contract being
of
negotiated.
course,
So,
100%.
but yeah, COVID obviously nobody could have expected that, and that was the big monkey wrench that went into the plans. But other than that, like the Saints have a well thought out plan, and people don't have to agree with it. You know, it's kind of like they take these loans out to pay for other loans, and they just keep going it, but they're never having to pay off that first loan.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think some people have a hard time separating their own, day to day. It might sound rudimentary and ridiculous, but their day to day fiscal responsibility with what NFL teams are doing with the salary cap.
Yeah,
You know,
look.
it seems if you handled your own checkbook personally, or if you own a company, if you handled your own company the way the Saints are, on a macro level handling their own salary cap issues, then yeah, of course that would reflect some problems, but it's not that. It's the NFL salary cap. It is its own system. It has its own rules. You have guys like Kai Harley, like you just mentioned, who have mastered these rules. They work with a guy like Loomis who has years of experience. And so, to the common observer who doesn't know anything about the salary cap, at least anything compared to a guy like Kai Harley, yeah, of course it might seem like checkbook fiscally responsible, but it's the NFL salary cap. You do what's best to position your team to a competitive advantage. And I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's saying use the Saints, I guess, approach to the salary cap as you would, balance your own personal checkbook.
I think some people are. I think people that's why they get so heated about it. They feel like Loomis is, just flipping. He's like the guy that's flipping a house, but screwing people over to do it. Like, I mean,
cares?
Look at. Nick Wright called it a Ponzi scheme.
Well, here's
Yeah,
the deal:
that's-
is
people are getting that
it
personal
is it
about it.
compliant with the rules that the NFL has
That's what I'm
laid
saying.
out?
He is with the NFL rules. But
Correct. So who gives a shit what
'cause
Nick
people
Wright says?
Don't want to take the time to look into what are the NFL rules? what
If
do
you
they really
didn't have
to
the
do?
talent that the Saints
So they-
currently
they-
have
they
on the
revert-
roster, this would be a bad
Yeah.
business plan.
Right? Because yeah,
But since they have the talent they have on the roster, when you hit on that 17 draft, you've hit on other picks since then. You've kind of got Alante, obviously last year was a
Pete
huge
Werner
hit.
the year before.
Pete Werner in the second round. Even a Debo potentially, a rougher year this year, but potential is there.
Eric
When-
McCoy.
Ruiz made a big step forward last year. See where all these things pan out. When you're hitting on that and you have young talent all around you, it makes sense to build a roster that can try to compete for a Super Bowl. That's what he's done over the last year. Now, we can argue whether he's correct about that or not, that the roster is good enough to do that. That's what he's currently doing.
Yeah.
You don't go get Carr if you're not doing that. You don't sign Jamal Williams. You don't, bring Thomas back if you don't think that if things fell your way, that you have a chance to win the Super Bowl. And the one thing I think that people have to realize is Vegas just came out and has the Saints at the fourth highest win total in NFC. That's a contender. That puts you in the Final Four in your conference. If you can make it there, anything is possible.
Yeah, and
So-
look at the rest of the division. It's trash.
Yes. So the path for
Even the
us is
conference.
the path we've always wanted. We've had a very difficult division for 15 years with Breeze. Every team made the Super Bowl in that era. It was a really, highly contested division. Now it looks like the division's down. and you debatably have the best roster to go after that division now, and you definitively have the best quarterback, why not continue to push and go after those free agents right now, dead money aside, and pursue it to win the division, get in the playoffs, have a home game, and see what happens. A couple things fall your way. Maybe you catch the top 2 teams in the division. In the conference. Maybe you're not there now. You're a couple injuries away from being there in one direction or the other.
Yeah, and they're also a couple injuries away from getting upset. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. You're a couple injuries by them from being the best team.
Right.
If you're 4th now, you're an injury or 2 away from being a top 2 team in your conference, theoretically. There's no reason to try and reset the scales right now. You go forward, you have a roster that can compete, and now you have a quarterback that has, in my opinion, without a doubt, been a top 15, top half quarterback for his entire career, and has shown signs as a top 5 quarterback. He would have won the MVP the year they were 13-2 when he broke his ankle. He was a top 3 MVP guy that year. They went to the playoffs without him and lost. That was his best year. The year with Gruden, he completed over 70% of his passes. He's made 4 Pro Bowls. This is not a average quarterback. This is an above-average quarterback definitively who, in the right system, could potentially become a top 10 type of quarterback. That is good enough to get you to advance in the playoffs.
Yeah, and to your point, you brought up how he had such a great year under Gruden. The Gruden system it's Carmichael, Sean Payton, it's kind of an offshoot of the Gruden system. So there's a lot of similarities. So this is why I think Derek Carr is set up. He's tailor-made for success here. If we can flood him with weapons, and the way they have done so far, where we're signing people.
He's got the skill weapons.
You're setting him up for success, and honestly,
it is not easy to complete 70% of your passes, and he did that in a season with Gruden.
I think the biggest question is, it seems like everyone's in pretty large agreement that he gives us more wins than last year, and even one more win than last year gives us in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The question is, Nick mentioned playoff advancement. I mean, the NFC's down compared to the AFC, and right now, if you're an NFC team, there's a much bigger question of making the Super Bowl versus winning the Super Bowl, because you come out of the NFC, I mean, good luck picking any one of the 3 top AFC teams.
100%.
Now any given Sunday, any given Super Bowl,
any fan on the planet would
Herm Edwards, shout out,
take on all the dead money in the world for a chance to try and beat the best team in the AFC.
But do we think? Look, yeah, I mean, you got to give yourself a chance. That's all we're asking for. But do we think that the Derek Carr signing with the weapons we've had is enough to get us from?
Let's just do
this.
Does it
get us
we
from
had
wild
7
card?
wins. Corey, where does Derek Carr take you from 7 wins last year with essentially the same team with some minor? How many wins?
I mean, low point of 2, potentially 4.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, here's the thing. Look at our schedule.
Team.
Look at our schedule this year. We've already touched on how the rest of the NFC South is down. They're in various stages of rebuilding, taking different approaches, and we're going to see how that works out over the next couple of seasons. And we're also playing the AFC South, if I'm not mistaken. Look at that division. They are not. This isn't like you're playing the AFC West. You're not playing the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders and all that.
Yeah.
The Titans, they're going through a rebuild.
Yeah.
The Texans, they're going to be starting a rookie quarterback. This isn't some
Colts
tough
are
division.
in the toilet. Jacksonville, we'll see.
Jacksonville could be competitive. Yeah, I mean,
could be a good team, but they're certainly not a great team.
The Texans and Colts are in the category. The Texans are the Texans. The Colts are the Colts. They are who we thought they were.
Well, neither of them are trying to win right now. They're full scale trying to rebuild.
Yeah, I think at this point you have to, when you look around at the rest of the NFC South, you have to say they're down. This is our golden opportunity, at least for this season, probably for the next season as well, to run away with the division if we play our cards right. At that point, you get to the playoffs. Division winner automatically goes to the playoffs. You hope that you get one of the top 2 seeds.
You host a game.
Yeah, you're going to host a home game.
Yeah.
So, look, like Nick said, you never know what happens in the playoffs.
No, we're
Some
not
teams
named
get
the
hot.
Cowboys, so we're not guaranteed a first-round exit.
So, you have to go for it. You can't look at the rest of that division and say, fuck it, we're going to rebuild. No, you don't rebuild. You reload and you try to go for it.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's too many young stars on that team to reload right now.
Yeah.
It's just simple fact.
Quick hitters, favorite non-Derek Carr free agency signing.
I'll be honest with you, Mike Thomas coming back.
Does that count?
I think it counts.
No, that counts
I think
because
it
we
counts.
thought he was gone.
We never made him a free agent, though.
Yeah, but
He was always under contract. He restructured.
So we'll throw a curveball
So
to you. Nick.
outside of Mike Thomas.
What did we need more? The 2 defensive tackles we signed or Jamal Williams?
I'm gonna say Jamal Williams.
I'm going to say the 2 defensive tackles. Only because I think you can get running back in the draft as a rookie that can contribute right away if you have to. It happens every year. There's many rookies that come in and do great. A defensive tackle ready to come in and be a starter in your team and get 2 of them that are going to be high rotation players. I think that was more important. Also because that's our best side of the ball right now. You needed to fill all those losses. Obviously, what I was going to bring up next in free agency when we were talking, is it more important to get that third defensive end that I'm calling it, if you're calling Turner our second starter, or is signing another running back?
No, I think you get the second running back acquisition has to come from the draft.
But let's say Kareem Hunt is looking for 1 year, $2.5 million.
If you strike out in the draft and the guy you like isn't there, then go for it. Well, look, I'm gonna say this: you
But does
cannot
Kareem
count on
Hunt
Kamara
not
right now.
fit the Kamara role as far as a receiver? Jamal Williams, he can catch a little bit. He's going to be our bruiser, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want him to be the new Ingram, right?
Yeah.
6 foot, 215 pounds.
Yeah,
or some
he
shit.
wants to hit people. Do you go get that perfect fit if they're available for cheap right now?
I fill it in the draft.
No matter what, regardless of who's available and what.
No, if we strike out in the draft and let's say, the guy we want goes ahead of our pick every time and we just don't get the one that can fill that role, then yes, go sign someone like a Kareem
So do you
Hunt.
draft – what type of running back do you draft?
You know the one I want. I want Gibbs from Alabama. That's my guy.
Yeah,
He's small though, isn't he?
He's 5'9", 200.
Does he do it?
He's 200. And look, the guy is as good of a receiver as he is a running back.
Yeah, he's a great receiver.
He's
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess your depth guy has to have some pass catching if you assume Kamara goes down and Jamal is your bruiser.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to say this about Kamara. You cannot count on Kamara right now. As of right now, we know he's going to get suspended unless something drastically changes. And this is where we'll ask you, Mr. Legal expert, our resident attorney.
There's a lot that could happen.
He's going to get suspended. And if I'm the Saints,
Well,
I'm
does he get
looking at this
suspended
team-
if inevitably the charges get dropped? Does he get suspended?
Well, that's the thing about the NFL. Is
That's
that
50-50.
You see it all the time where the legal process plays out to where there's either no criminal liability, he's got charges dismissed, or the felony has been reduced to a misdemeanor. But because of the collective bargaining agreement, what Goodell has set in place, the NFL has the ultimate say on whether or not the actions as they see them violate the player conduct policy.
I agree
And
with that, but
with everything
first-time
that's out,
offenders have usually come off pretty well,
Sure.
especially if charges are dropped.
but
Yeah, but there's also
you
video.
also looked at the Ray Rice incident where video.
Yeah,
And
video
in
makes
this-
a difference.
This incident, Ray Rice didn't have any previous offenses. There was a graphic video out there. Now, the video in this case of the actual incident isn't that great. The first
There's
time I
also
saw
the
it,
video in the limo after.
the video in the limo was pretty bad because you can see AK talking about what he was trying to do, which, and if it's not Louisiana, but in Louisiana, you have a thing called intent that you have to prove, and that's about intent on a recording. So, while his lawyer might be very good, I hope his lawyer's good as a fan and gets the charges reduced. I don't trust anybody in the disciplinary office at the NFL as far as I can throw them in terms of saying they have enough to warrant a multiple game suspension.
Well, here's one thing.
There's also
Well,
a
hold
part
on.
of it to
You
what
and I have
happened
talked
before
about
all
this.
that's come up, and they're trying to say there were events before that went down, and it wasn't just,
The
Out
thing
of
is,
nowhere.
Goodell's got enough to say if he wants to throw
He
a six,
definitely has enough.
even if he
wants
wants to throw an 8-game suspension on him, he's got enough to say he's got.
if he's guilty and that goes down, he is getting 8 games. I think you need to count on that,
He's
and that's how
getting
you
at
have to
least
plan.
6.
if AK catches a felony suspension, a felony conviction, then that suspension is going to be
It's going to
very
be bigger
hefty.
than 6.
If he catches
Absolutely.
a misdemeanor conviction, it's going to be 6 at a minimum. If he gets somehow, I don't know how the DA would ever do this, but if they drop the charges completely, he's still getting a suspension. There's no way he's not.
Well,
There just isn't.
Well, here's another question. This is for you, Nick. The Kamara of the last 2 seasons. Do you think he's still on the upswing, or is he trending downward as a running back? He's reaching that. He's going to be.
It depends
28
how you
years
look
old.
at it.
I don't think he's on that. that bell curve most running backs are on. I think
You can't say he's on
still
the
fine.
upswing. There's no
He's
such
absolutely not on the upswing.
But you have to look at it two ways. When he had true support in the backfield, he was a different player.
Right.
When he had to shoulder the load in the running game, he is nowhere near the player.
Well, he's not a
he
bell
was
cow running back.
Correct. Now, theoretically, you fix that where Williams can take 200 carries and AK can go back down to his 150 and can get into the passing game more. And if they scheme it that way, I don't see why he can't get back to a similar type of player. More of a complementary.
Well, he's a satellite back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's his skill set. That's what he was great at. That's why
Absolutely.
we drafted him. So he's not going to be the guy who eats 250 carries.
But he shouldn't be. But here's the thing. I'm not counting on him. As of right now, I don't even consider him on the team. I need another running back in addition to Jamal Williams.
I agree with that. But if you don't have him this year, that's a bad outlook for the Saints, I would say.
Oh, it's a horrible outlook.
We need his skill set in the pass game to come back full.
Agree 1,000%, and this is why I'm saying Jahmyr Gibbs. If he somehow makes it to 40, and that's highly unlikely, if he is there at 40, you run to the podium, you take him, you have your in-house Kamara replacement at 21 years old. Kamara comes back, you got a three-headed running back monster. And honestly, Gibbs is such a good receiver. I know at Alabama, and especially at Georgia Tech, where he was the previous 2 years, they played him at wide receiver.
Same thing
you
they
gotta
did with
assume
Kamara.
that there's-
Same thing they did with Kamara. That's
The
Right, but
chances
he's a
of-
better receiver than Kamara.
Even if, let's just say, Michael Thomas stays healthy this year, the chances of then Shaheed and Olave playing a complete season together are pretty minimal.
Yeah, guess what? You know what that is? That's called a good problem. If
Right.
all of these guys
So then
are
you insert
healthy,
Gibbs.
you're rotating them in.
Right.
Like, think back to the Saints Super Bowl season. You had Devery was the deep shot guy. You had Meacham in there. He would hit some deep ones. You had Colston. You had Shockey. You had Lance Moore. You had all of these guys you could cycle in at any given point. Hell, Mike Bell was an animal for most of that year.
You bringing up the Saints Super Bowl season is actually
Reggie Bush, Pierre Thomas.
You took the word out of my mouth because that was probably our best running back usage.
that was
ever.
incredible.
And so
Well,
No
that's
one,
your
had,
model.
no one had 1,000 yards.
Right, but that's your model. I mean, that's
That's
about as
your model.
close.
But two had the 1,000 total yards.
Yeah.
Because
But-
the screen game was out of
Oh,
control.
my God.
with
Well,
this
the,
team.
the greatest screen running back
Pierre
ever
Thomas
in Pierre
is-
Thomas.
Yeah,
is
Pierre Thomason
unbelievable.
coming back through that door, but AK is pretty damn close. And if you get him back at full strength, even in week 9,
AK's a better player.
It's a different.
but
He's
it's
not a
different-
screen guy.
He's not a screen guy.
He's a wheel route. He's the guy who gets into space.
but I think
Pierre
the,
was that great.
the one
Pierre had the way to
unsung-
read.
and maybe some people it's sung, but the one piece that really kept everybody honest was the Mike Bell piece. Because when I think about the running back usage of
was the
that
hammer.
year, it's the Mike Bell running back usage to me because he kept everything honest, and it wasn't every.
But it
single
was also
game.
mostly fourth quarter.
And it was also
like,
mostly
we're just
fourth
gonna
quarter.
bury
Nobody
you.
wanted to
But
tackle
if
him
you
in the
can
fourth
get
quarter.
Jamal Williams to a Mike Bell level, if not better, then that opens up everybody else that comes in when it's not Jamal Williams.
So how about this? So second round, you say Gibbs is there,
Give me Washington in the first, Gibbs in the second.
but what if we don't address defensive line any further in free agency?
Well, this is why I was saying I need another defensive lineman now to where we're not forced to take one in the first or second round.
And that's kind of what I was getting at with running back. If the best opportunity comes to sign a running back that would fill that need and allows you to go into the draft to address the other two needs, find the best values out there. If it happens to be running back, fine. If it happens to be edge rusher, which there's a lot of them out there still, because Clowney's out there, you've got Ngakwe's out there,
yeah.
Frank Clark.
well, we need to get younger at running
I think
back.
you stay away from.
This is the biggest thing. We need to get younger at running back. We have
We're
two of
looking
them
for a
that are going to be
one-year guy.
28.
But
Yeah,
Clowney
but
can also play
get a
tackle.
younger guy with juice, man. We don't have a single
No, I'm not
guy.
talking about running back. I'm talking about defensive line. If you sign Clowney, you have another rotational guy
yeah.
in the edge and tackle.
I think signing
Oh,
Clowney.
agree. I would love to sign Clowney. Would love it.
I
But
think
my
that-
point is, I
but
don't
Jim
want
has to
I don't
pick.
want three running backs making $3 to $4 million a year, and they're all 28 years old. Give me a young guy with some juice. I need an ETN.
But
in
we're
the
talking
backfield.
about bird in hand, right? Like available now. You can address that need for cheap. You don't have to wait to see if that guy makes it to 40. Do you jump on it?
Yeah, but you even said it. You can get a running back, whether you don't want to get one in the first for the most
you were
part.
very
You want
specific on your running
Second,
back.
third. No, my preference is Gibbs, but there are plenty of running backs that fit the bill as far as what we need. We need somebody with some juice.
Spears.
Look, I love Spears. We don't have a single running back that scares you. and I'm counting Kamara. Like Kamara was never fast.
No,
He's
but
got
he
the
still
initial.
scares people because of the way he can evade tackles.
How many long runs does he have? I
That's
need a
not
guy
his
that's
thing.
going
That's not
to
his thing.
break past the line.
He
and
breaks you
go.
down in the pass game. He opens people up.
He does, but we need someone who is just going to take it and score. The threat to take it to the house every time. We need somebody like that. We don't have it. That opens up the passing game.
Yeah, just a burner.
We need a burner. Like, give me, like, ETN. How many long runs and you guys know how much I love ETN.
Yeah, the guy that makes the safety say, "Oh shit," when there's a little bit of daylight.
That right there. That's it exactly.
Yeah.
The guy that makes you say, oh shit, when he sees him turning that corner and he's gone. We don't have that.
Yeah.
Our running backs look like they run like they're wearing concrete Nikes.
Well, we haven't had any other than AK for the last couple of years. It's
Look,
been
man, I don't want Benjamin as the third running back.
No.
Give me somebody with
he
some,
kicked our ass last year.
Anyone who is
What he scored? He
anyone
scored
who
twice
has
against.
worn a Carolina Panthers jersey and lined up in the backfield has kicked our ass at some point.
yeah. Give me somebody with some juice. I need somebody with some with afterburners who's going to break a long run.
Yep.
I don't care if he gets just 8 carries a game. Just give me someone who's a threat to break it.
Yeah. Well, here's
We
the
got
thing.
two speed demons at wide receiver. Rashid
did.
Shaheed
Right, I
and
think
Chris
that's where you
Olave.
look for it. I mean, like the Super Bowl teams, we didn't have game breakers. Even though Reggie was fast,
Reggie-
he wasn't busting long runs.
No.
No,
Well,
but the threat was there.
I think
Yeah,
Reggie's in a
well-
different category because the threat, like
The
Max
threat
said. I
was
mean,
there.
you
Look
don't
in the
win a
playoffs. You mean he had the 50-yard run against the Cardinals where he got corralled and then just took off.
Reggie was the ultimate black hole in any other team's game plan
Yeah,
opposition.
remember
that
the
was
80-yarder against
but
the Bears?
You couldn't.
But that was the
ignore
pass
him.
game. That's what I'm saying. He opened them up with the pass game for
I mean,
sure.
Anything Reggie did was just a.
But see, that's Gibbs to me. Gibbs can do that.
Yeah.
Like he ran a 4.32, I think, at the combine. If you ever watch him play, you know he's fast as shit.
Sure.
And he looks kind of like AK, which is cool.
Yeah, he does. 2 guys in the backfield with the long arm tape. Bring it on, man.
unleash
It's
them
always a
both.
plus. So yeah, I think we've established a lot of what's going on in free agency, and then look, there's a lot of time between now and the draft. I mean, like we said, it's 3/28. First day of the draft is what is it? 4/28,
27, I think.
27.
Yeah.
So roughly a month away. A lot can change between now and then. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for what we've been talking about today. I mean, going forward, any thoughts on what to expect on the pod?
The unexpected.
Expect the
No
unexpected.
structure. We're just
Nothing
going to
but
go.
Saints.
Yeah.
Give us
Yeah,
the mics,
fresh
turn
take.
us loose.
There you go. That's gonna do it for this week.
See you next week.
Boom.